Well, I am back after some playing around, and the problem with the date going null on my member screen was entirely my problem, or my fault. We talked about the issue with the struts not doing an automatic conversion to date from our input field, and we fixed it with a set member date overridden method that takes a string and uses the simple date format. And so I'm back in the member.java class, and some of you were probably screaming into the recording, "You forgot something," and indeed I did. In the simple date format, I forgot the date format. So it was returning a null as my parsed date, and that was then being correctly propagated back to the database. So if we go to member date and put the new method that we wrote to parse the string into our global memdate, which is what Hibernate uses, we need to put the correct format that will be found for that date. And now I think we can run our application. Do an update, and have it not wipe out our date. I've been playing around so the middle initial isn't what it used to be. So we'll change middle initial again. Member date is 3/10/98. We try and update, and it says the member was updated. It looks like it's updated, and the member date is still there. If we go back to the login screen and call for the member again, there we go. So that problem was, as I say, entirely my fault. I've also done a bit more analysis or research on struts 2 and dates. The other program that I was running must have been showing this problem, and I just didn't notice it, because struts 2 definitely does not do the conversion. Well, according to the research I did, it says it doesn't, but I know that I had a working program that was doing an update. I don't know if it was wiping out my dates, but it wasn't crashing the way ours was at the beginning of our session. So very strange, but we will move on. So we now have, with our member update action, a working post back to the database based on a new Hibernate method for update member. And I would like to move on and try to activate the transaction display. Okay, I did make one change on the form. The View Transactions button was showing way over to the right because I hadn't put it in a table row, so I did bring it up. It would have been below table. I brought it up to a new table row so that when it shows, the View Transactions button is right below the date input area. And we will need a new action to make this work. So let me get to the proper spot in my notes here. Let's go first to the struts XML, and we will add an action. The action will be the show purchases action, and the class that it will call is a new one, actions.showPurchases. I'm going to do that as plural. Whoops. Closing tag, closing action tag, and then we will need a result for success. And if we have a success result, we will call for the purchases.jsp to display. And if for some reason we end up with an input result, that will take us back to the member screen. That would be if there's something wrong with their date input after we validate it. Although we would probably do that with a validator event in the action, so we'd never get to a result, success, or failure point. Okay, well this will cover us though, one way or the other. So the new action, and I guess I need to check member screen, make sure that yes, show purchases is the action. So let's see, I'd started to put in the action, I believe. And the action, if I can find my code here, my notes. Well, I don't seem to have it in my printouts. That's not surprising. I seem to have been completely unprepared for this lecture, even though I thought I was. Let's go ahead and add it. I think we can do this. Action support based action is what we're adding into this. And show purchases is the necessary name. Okay, so here's the new action. And happily, for the purposes of the screen without any starting date, all we really have to do is run a success if we build our Hibernate stuff correctly. So in this action, I'm going to comment out the throw exception note. We don't need that anymore. And all I'm going to do is return success. Because if we get here, we just know that they've asked for purchases to be shown. And I am not going to go through a long process of trying to read the database, because that's what Hibernate is all about. And in fact, what I'm going to try to do is incorporate the purchases as a collection inside the member. So we will need a couple of things. I'm going to try and grab them from my old ClubDB that I still have around. I know this is fraught with danger, but since this version of the ClubDB doesn't have to do the extra input stuff, we're just kind of going back to the original ClubDB scheme and making it a struts framework with Hibernate. I'm going to grab the purchase.java and bring it down into my business class. Just copy. You don't have to refactor copy, just copy it, I think. And then let's take a look at what a purchase object looks like and see if it needs anything. Our system says it needs some fixing. We'll see. Even though we're doing it with Hibernate, things should be the same. A purchase matches the TBL purchases table, has the identity, has a member ID, purchase date, which is a date field. Oh yes, so it's based on transcode as well. You know what? This was a confusion with the way I did it previously. So let's just change some names here. Instead of transcode, since we've really got a transcode up here, this is the entry for the code description. And so instead of trans code, let's make this a private, what are we going to call this? Let's call it codes master. Well, we'll do it singular. Code master. Code master. Okay. So a private code master, or well, maybe even just code record. Let's do that. Code rec. Shorten it a little bit. So a private code rec will be our link to the transcode TBL codes table once we get the record in place. So we're actually going to do our Hibernate 2 layers deep. There's no code rec yet, and also when we get trans description, we're going to return code rec.getTransDescription. So we've got some errors here, which we're going to, I hope, clean up in just a second. All right, code rec, return code rec. Oh, that was a capital R. Going to be a capital R on that variable. Code rec.getTransDescription. Okay, so once we have a code rec in place, we should be all right, and we will do that by getting the transcode.java from our old, but we're going to change the name. So I'm going to do a copy, and then down here in business, let's see, can I do a refactor copy? Yeah, that'll let me change the name. So I'm going to change it to code rec. Code rec. Okay. Let's refactor. All right, so we've got a code rec entry, which is also an entity. So code rec TBL codes has transcode as its ID. And since I copied the program the way we did it the first time, it is annotating the get and set methods instead of the underlying globals, but I think that'll be okay. We'll see. Trans description, get trans description. Okay, so that's our code record, and now the purchase is happy because the purchase says, yes, I can do a one-to-one match on the transcode join column, and we're not going to insert or update these fields, but we'll bring in as a code rec object called code rec, and then when trans description is called for from the purchase class, we will just get the global code rec get trans description. Okay, so now they're linked, and our task is to also link this chain. So we've got purchase now chained to code rec, and we want to go to member and add a new value. And the new value will be a private list of purchase objects. So let me get to my code, and I'll go ahead and put this just above the transient mapping. Still haven't looked into the problem of the nulls and the date fields. But anyway, we're going to have a private list of purchase objects called purchases. So I'm going to pull, when I get the member, in other words, I'm going to pull all of the purchases for that member. And purchases should also pull the code descriptions, the purchase description. Okay, so we will import Java util list, and then we'll do our mapping, which is a one-to-many with a fetch of fetch type .eager. We'll need some imports there. Fetch type, one-to-many. All right, and then the join column. Name is memID. So we're joining on memID, and for right now, to avoid certain problems, I'm going to also set this insertable to false and update. It's ABLE, no E in there. Updatable to false. We would have to make some changes if we were going to try to go with a cascading update, but I'm not going to do that because in this scenario, this version of the ClubDB, we're back to just displaying purchases, not adding them. All right, so let's do an import for join column, and then it doesn't like something about the way I've written it. Illegal start of type. Let's see, at join column name equals memID, insertable equals false, comma, updatable equals false. Did I forget? Oh, I put a semicolon when I didn't want one, of course. No semicolon on the annotation. All right. Well, list of purchases. We now will incorporate the get for that list into our member object. So down below, somewhere in the body of the, well, let's do it. Since we don't need the get DB data, we're not using that anymore. I'm just going to go down here. Let me change my mind. Oh, this is silly to. It's not something to worry about. Okay, let's do it before the is authenticated and after all the other gets. Okay, so this will now have a public list of purchases, purchase objects, get purchases, and it will return this dot purchases. So we will be able to return with that one get call all purchases, which we hope Hibernate will automatically pull when the member is obtained. And that should allow us to go straight to the purchases display and use this new method to be our list container. So let's do one more thing here. We need to get our purchase, the web page. I'm looking for the JSP. So purchases.jsp from the old version of ClubDB. So I'm going to do a copy and paste that into our struts web pages. All right, and now let's take a look at purchases JSP. We actually, for a quick test purposes, we can probably go ahead and use the expression language as it exists because it's interchangeable with struts and even the JSTL tag library. It's just that the individual purchase records now come from, and we've got to get this one right. Let me look in my notes. Purchases JSP should now be the, oh, well, you know what? I can use the member that's on the session for this as well. So let's just go member dot get purchases. So throw away the get, capital P becomes lowercase. So let's just try to use the regular expression language connected with our JSTL to go through the now connected list of purchases on member and into P, and then we have to make sure that this is correct. So our member, or rather the purchase record, has purchase date S, trans type, and trans description. So I think we might be okay. Let's look at purchases again. Purchase date S, trans type, trans code, trans description, and amount. I think we're actually okay. There's our get amount, comes back formatted. All right. So without too much change, using Hibernate to chain all those things together, member to its collection of purchases, and each purchase connected to its purchase description, trans description. Let's see what happens. I think I might be ready to just to test this. Oh, you know what I forgot to do though? I'm glad it gave me this error. The module has not been deployed because I forgot to tell Hibernate that we now have 2 new entity classes. So Hibernate, we need to map class business dot purchase and mapping class business dot code rec. Still haven't found a nice name for that. Okay. And let's clean and build. Try and take care of that deployment problem. Oh, build fail with that struts convention plugin. Okay, I think we're still okay. So let's run it. Otherwise the build was all right, I think. And A043 18. There's our record. So we're going to try and view transactions. That the show purchases action has no code for handling a month, day, and year. So we'll try to go straight to transactions. Oh, and it worked. That's quite surprising for the way that, given the way the recording was going otherwise today. And of course we've lost our total again, but you know, I always leave that to you, right? Okay. I want to do one additional. Oh, now I want to show you my error, because I did have one error I was expecting. I've got a lot of errors that I wasn't expecting, but I'll show you the problem. If we go back, I don't have a return note, do I? Let me fix that. So we want to go on our purchase JSP members. Well, I was down there. Did I just not? I just didn't scroll down far enough. That should be okay for our. I thought I might have to change it. Remember that on your login page, or your member screen page rather, you've got to update your href so that it refers to the struts project. But here we're just going back to member screen within the project, so I think we're okay. All right, so let me run that again. I'll use the other fellow. And we'll view transactions. Okay, it was down there. I just didn't scroll down far enough. He has fewer transactions, Mr. Zimmerman. Mrs. Zimmerman, whichever. Anyway, back to the member screen. So far, that's good. We can go back and forth. Now here, watch this problem. Q update member. Okay. Oh, it didn't take it. Well, I think that might be part of my problem. Let's see. Let's go back to login screen. Huh. I wasn't really expecting that error. Fascinating. Well, let's sort this one out. I am supposedly not getting an error. Let me see if my fix still the transactions. It's just not updating the member. Okay, so the fix that I expected I would have to make, I believe, is in the member update method. And that is that after you call for the update of your record, so we're in member update, we're not getting an error return, and we should have been putting the new member, we were putting the new member back on the session, the updated member, not seeing an error, but it wasn't doing the update. So, were we getting an exception that we weren't expecting, or not? Let's just see what happens here. I'm going to do a member DB. And I'm going to stop at update. Because we weren't seeing the member updated problem either, were we? Interesting. Well, let's debug. Let's clean and build. And debug the main project. Oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. Debug is not working again. All right, let me try one more time. Stop the run. Clean and build. Debug main project. There we go. Okay. Go back to AO43 for a minute. Trying to do an update here. Well, yeah. So it never stopped on my, it never got to the execute again for the update. So this is not what I was expecting. I will pause the recording and see if I can sort out why it's not getting to the update again. Well, I'm back. As you can see from the timeline on the recording, this has been a rather long and painful process. And I could not find any information on Struts 2 bugs like this. But we have a solution, so let's walk through it again. So our problem right now is that if we run the application and bring up a member, we can view the transactions, but we've suddenly lost our ability to update the member on the main member screen. Transactions are there, can't update. And I had another program that I did before this, before the lecture. It worked absolutely fine. And there's one tiny little difference. It goes back to the earlier problem we were having, so I'm beginning to, I don't know what to say about struts at this point. So here's what, and the update is failing, by the way, if you do error trapping on it. It's the same fail that we were having with the date problem. Struts gets into the member update area, and for whatever reason fails. Wait a minute, why am I not seeing my whole set here? Somehow I've lost my gray area, my line numbers. Oh, this is lovely. One thing after another. Anyway, let me show you where the issue is. So error trapping step by step shows you that it's failing in the get member, set member, where Struts framework is taking the form fields and putting them into the member fields. And our solution to that in the member class was to add this set member that accepts a string. Well, apparently that was not the thing to do. So, because even though that worked for our initial situation, when we added the new object, the list of purchases, it's the Struts transfer of form data to the member object failed again. No explanation, no error, nothing in the logs, but just by painstaking comparison to the working program, here's what I discovered. We need to remove the string converter from our member object. So what we're going to do is take that set mem date that takes the string, and we're just going to delete it. And you know what? I'm going to do a save all here, and I'm not sure why I'm have lost my line numbers. What did I do? Windows. Let's just reset Windows. Well, I'm still out of luck. Oh, gosh. Let me try closing NetBeans and reopening it. Isn't this fun, just following along with my pain and anguish? I know you all have experienced the same in the past. Oh, now my Tomcat's not going to work right. Oh, gosh. Let me pause for a minute and see if it'll eventually stop. Well, Tomcat never stopped properly, so I suspect I'm going to be hosed when I try to run this. But I'll take you through the fix, and we'll finally be done. So what we've done on member.java is we've removed the overloaded set mem date that took a string. We're just back to set mem date that takes a date. We do have the get mem date s, but that's not the one we use. So you go back to the member screen, and where we had the mem date matching the mem date field, but we were calling for the value to be set to the memdate s, we have to take that out. So we do memdate and memdate on our fields. And when you do that, the update comes back. Oh, it did come up. So AO43, log on. Now we're showing a date in a different form than we had been, but I'm sure that's a setting somewhere in Struts. I'm not going to bother looking for it. So Struts has correctly parsed the date out to us. We can do a view transactions. That's still coming up. And we can do, let's see, something I haven't used here. Abraham or Joseph S. Abraham. We can do an update, and now it works. Members updated. But here's the error that I was expecting, and the only one I was expecting when I started off this lecture hours ago, is that after you do the update of the member and you try to view the transactions have been lost. Well, that is marginally understandable, because we didn't. There's something about the Hibernate refresh which was not working quite the way we had hoped it would work. So the fix for losing the transactions after a member update is to go into the member update action, and when my line numbers are back after I closed and reopened the application. Back here, when we see that we don't have an error on the member update function, we actually need to refresh by Hibernate call. So we need to do member equals memberdb dot get member, and we'll use we've got m up there, which should be the same ID, so we'll do m.getMemID. So we're going to refresh our member object, which was just updated to the database by Hibernate. We're going to refresh it with a get call and then re-put member onto the session. And so now, when we run, do a log on, we can view transactions. All right. We can update our member information, member updated, but we can still view, there they are, still view the transactions. Okay. There's one last thing that I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to say we're done here. Even though we don't view transactions with a starting date, that's really a Hibernate issue. We did that before with ClubDB using Eclipse Link, so I'm not going to worry about this stuff. I'm just happy that we're going to finally have a working operation here, a working program. And so the only last thing I wanted to show you is that there is a struts tag value for the iterator tag, rather, and that can be used in place of the JSTL. Now, there's really nothing wrong with the JSTL, and it does mix in with struts, but if we go to Purchases JSP, where we'd been calling for the expression language to do all of this stuff for us, I am going to comment out the for each that we have here. So exclamation hyphen hyphen, and bring it down, hyphen hyphen, close. So now we are commented out in terms of the for each that used the JSTL, and I'm going to remove the JSTL taglib reference, just so I make sure that the for each doesn't try to process. All right, so now it's all commented, and I'm going to add in, just going to copy it from the member screen, I'm going to add in our S tag lib. Into purchases. All right, so we know we've got, so now we've got the struts tags available. So we can, in struts tags here, do the same thing basically, but we use an S iterator tag, and the value will now be the member that is on the session. So we'll use that, but there's still the get purchases method of that member. So we will use that as our collection, and you don't have to put a variable P here. What we're going to do instead is use the property tag. So I'm going to copy from above this inner stuff, the TR, just so I don't have to redo all that HTML coding. But on our TDs, instead of expression languages calls to a P object that the JSTL knows, we add an S property entry, and the property value is simply the fields that go in the column. So we can use the perch DTS as our property entry for the first one. And it should be happy in a minute. What? Oh, I forgot this closing slash. Sorry, closing slash on the S property entry, and then property entry value is trans type. Closing tag. Property value equals transcode next. Then property value is trans description. Final property value is amount. Okay, so just an alternative to the JSTL iterator or for each, we have the struts iterator, uses the collection still of the list object purchases, but then the property value, since you're inside the iterator, knows that you're referring to the list object purchases when you call for the specific individual data fields. And that shouldn't change our operation at all. So we'll run one more time. A043, 18, and we should still be able to view transactions. So those are now built with the struts iterator, and we can still update our member and still view the transactions. And so the only functionality that's missing now is the total line again and the start date for purchases. I'm not going to worry too much about that. In fact, I'll just make it extra credit. If anybody really wants to finish it out, we'll leave that as extra credit. I will also have some stuff to say about the final grading in the program or in the course, which will be, of course, very lenient since you all have worked with me and struggled with me and tried to get things going. I think clearly the JPA stuff, both Eclipse Link and Hibernate, is by far the more important because it really is, in this application, you can see being able to essentially have one object that links all of the sub-objects it needs, and then have one update call, one get call and one update call, is really quite nice. As I was speaking with a couple of students over the last few days about struts, having not taught it for about 4 years, I went back and looked. I can't say that I'm that excited about it now. I think that Spring has a much better reputation, and justifiably from what I can tell, but we'll know more after I take my certification course in the spring. In spring. Well, no, I'll take it in January. I guess that's still winter. But anyway, sorry, I'm totally off my rocker today, having gone through such problems. I would really like to sit down with a struts expert and ask them why struts is unable to pass data from the member screen when the only issue was that we called for a value with a different get method than the assigned member date method. That was really, really strange. But anyway, I hope you get yours running. I will be in the class, available in the classroom during class time on the 4th, no, the 7th. Where are we? We're in the 2nd of December. We will be having a work session on the 7th and also a work session on the 14th. That'll be much longer. I'll issue some information about that. But you should also get going as best you can. I'm looking for some level of completion on the next assignment, which is another intended to be Struts 2, so we are going to do it as Struts 2. I really just need you to get it set up and see what you can do with it. It's Field Pass. I am completely worn out, but I will try and have another quick little recording on the Struts Hibernate issues and or the Field Pass database and what you need to do. But anyway, I guess we finally got there in the end after hours of struggle. Thanks very much.